My name is Enis. I'm with E2VC. It's a weird coincidence because four of us, all of our names start with an E. I have Ece from Khosla, Edith from Raise Capital, and Eylul from Gradient with me here today. Before we start the discussion, why don't you guys talk a bit about yourselves, why you're here, and what brought you to Turkey? Why are you here at Go Global, starting with Eylul?
Who are you? Oh, hi. Nice to meet you. I'm sorry, I don't know how to use a microphone. I'm a partner at a fund called Gradient. We were created inside of Google in 2017 with the sole purpose of investing in AI businesses. We've recently spun out, became independent. And so I'm a seed investor, but I'm born and bred Turkish. And I was super impressed with that conversation that we just had recently, like starting with the videos and like the fact that, we have so many incredible things to be proud of as a nation. Oh my goodness. But at the same time, there's so much potential to invest and think through the next generation of what technology means to the country, both as as we think about expanding the economic potential, but also, thinking about national security and the role that like maybe AI will play in terms of, bolstering our, geostrategic position. I think there's a lot of stuff in my head right now that makes me excited to be here.
Thanks. Edith? You come here really often, right? It's the
I'm here because of you.
Thank
That's
you.
the whole reason why I'm here.
Thank you.
My name is Edith Yeung. I'm a general partner at Raise Capital. So Raise Capital, we focus on early stage, all B2B infrastructure software. So we don't do B2C. Really, really core particular for our founders sell to developers. The reason why I'm here, I invested in 4 Turkish startups so far, and we have one in common, which is human finance with ARF. And very, very excited what Herbal is building, and hopefully more. But yeah, like we focus on writing like 3 to 5 million early B2B checks, and proud investor for companies like Databricks, Solana, and many, many others.
Thanks. Ece?
Hello, can you hear me?
It does work.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
It does work. Nice to meet everybody. My name is Ece. I invest at Khosla Ventures, multi-stage investment firm, anything from pre-seed through pre-IPO. I tend to focus on early stage, so seed, Series A's, and some Series B's. Very generalist across application layer software, financial technology, and even a little bit of consumer.
And at Khosla Ventures, you guys were super bullish on emerging markets early on. I think the firm and Vinod especially built that conviction way before others did. How did that come about?
So the way we build conviction in and outside of the US is pretty much the same, right? It's just find exceptional founders who are taking on really massive ideas, often with really good technical teams as well. That's really what we need at the seed and Series A stage. That's the equation. Great founder, great market, good technical team. Once you get to the later stages, of course, there's like metrics and financials you need to build conviction around. But at the early stage, it's really about finding the right people, like wherever they might be. Typically, we don't have like a dedicated how to go about investing in emerging market strategy. How we go about finding these opportunities is, it could be opportunistic, came through our network, got introduced to us by a local investor or the founder reached out, or it could be part of a targeted thematic strategy. We got excited about a team, we looked all over the world, and the team we are most excited about happens to be in a specific country. So that's really often how we go about it.
Interesting. So it's more of a top-down kind of an approach. You look at an industry, you're trying to pick a winner.
Sometimes.
Happens to be in Turkey, for example.
Sometimes, and sometimes it's really just opportunistic. We came across brilliant people, and we didn't think we were going to be excited about what they're building, but they got us excited. Like, that's really tends to be the equation. I would say, there was some discussion earlier about like the macroeconomic factors, inflation and whatnot. Like, I think that's not the that wouldn't stress me out too much because, as an investor, you have a higher risk appetite as a venture investor. I think something to consider is if we want to be real top partners after we invest and be helpful to the company, it depends on like, do we have the right network locally to be able to be helpful to the founder, help them recruit talent, find them the best salespeople. So then these events like this, like finding the right network is really helpful in, forming that investment strategy.
Interesting. And Edith, you've seen different cycles in San Francisco over the past few years, if not probably a decade or so, or past 2 decades. I feel like with AI, SF's dominance is just increasing even further. Would you agree with that?
I think every single company, if you don't have the AI word sprinkled within it, you probably will have a very, very hard time fundraising these days. But having said that, I was just thinking hard about, sort of this whole conference is about the outliers. And you think about outliers, the venture business is really a business about outliers. And outlier, what does that mean? I mean, obviously, look for us, because we're earlier stage investors, not growth. These guys have a lot of dry powder. For us, it's very, very early. So we always kind of think about like what are the two main things that we look for. One is on the people side, right? So being in Silicon Valley, it's probably not politically correct for me to say in the U.S., but I can tell you, every single VCs are looking for things that is the normal. What's that mean? Is they're looking at the Stanford, Harvard dropped out that look just like Mark Zuckerberg or Sam Altman.
I tried that with the hair. It didn't work out for our fundraising.
Sorry, like that ship's over for you.
Yeah.
And I don't look like that either. And in many cases, but having said that, there are just so many very, very amazing founders that are immigrant that have done so well, also in Silicon Valley. So even though they don't look like that, but the whole business of what we're trying to do is to find those outliers that don't look like the typical or traditional way of what is supposed to be. But yet, I think that if all of us who are sitting here are outliers, and just by nature that you're willing to come to the U.S., you're an immigrant to build something that you just don't even know what's going on like in terms of market. But what we're investing is not what you know today, it's what you're willing to learn for tomorrow. That's really what we're in the business in. The second thing that I always think about is are there actually market or segment or vertical that are the outlier things that we are not very clear today? So for me personally, crypto was one of them.
Can you talk about your Solana experience with numbers and precision?
I started learning about crypto in 2016. I learned about Bitcoin in 2011. I didn't even know how to spell it. And one thing leads to another. I realized it's definitely a market where it's just so new. And of course, now evolved to today, 2025, obviously everybody is very excited about it in the US. The new administration is very, very supportive of it, and therefore Huma is doing really, really well, have transacted over 7.5 billion in stablecoins so far, and thanks to the current administration, they really supported it. So stablecoin transaction seems very obvious today, but it wasn't obvious 8 years ago. So in some sense, being in early stage is all about thinking through, which industry where, when I met Anatoly, who's the founder of Solana, he's not the Harvard MIT grad. He came from Qualcomm, and he's actually Russian descent, but moved to the US many years ago. He definitely don't have that look. But when you talk to someone who's really, really into and so knowledgeable about the pain point, have a very strong viewpoint how the world's going to look like, that is the type of founder and market that we love investing in.
And Eylul, you invest into a lot of immigrant founders in the US, I know that, but does Gradient do investments outside the US, purely, founders in emerging markets? Can you give some examples of some of the standout companies?
So for the past, year and a half, I think I wrote 8 checks, and I was thinking, first one's Romanian, I got South African, I got India, British, Australian. To be honest with you, all of them end up building in the US. So I think talent is everywhere, but there is difference in the end markets, the depth of the capital markets, and the ability to build really big businesses that's changing. And obviously, US is the largest consumer economy, also the epitome of where you do software sales. But what's really cool and interesting that's happening now is the way people are tapping into those markets. So like a decade ago, we talked about all these gaming successes we saw in Turkey. There's an insane number of talented technical people here, but the domestic economy has always been the issue of selling into a market that's not receptive of purchasing software, or frankly, from a consumer market perspective, is quite volatile because of the currency as well as the inflation issues. But what the gaming folks have done is put the app on the App Store, and all of a sudden that distribution problem has been solved. And I think
would you do gaming investments? Is that a focus for Gradient? Are you going to start doing that?
No, we don't do a lot of
Still
dating.
not.
No, I still don't. But like, I guess the message I'm trying to deliver is that talent is everywhere. I think access to cloud resources everywhere. People can build everywhere, and the way I think you should still sell to the U.S. But the way you're tapping into those markets is evolving. You don't necessarily have to be there. But yeah, we don't make a lot of country level bets. We bet in people, kind of similar to what I was talking about. We find people wherever they are, and we make sure they sell to the U.S. That's our goal.
Nice. And we co-invested in an amazing company, Fal AI, together, led by
Yeah.
Görkem and Burkay. Now it's a $4.5 billion company. Can you talk about that experience? What made them stood out for you? Görkem
Well-
and Burkay specifically as founders.
Yeah, so to do well as an investor, you have to do three things. It's, you need to get good deal flow, you need to pick well, and then you need to get those people to work with you. I just got super lucky in that I made friends with exceptional people that happened to create a company. So there was not a lot of issue in terms of getting access or frankly picking. I would have given money to them to do anything. So I take zero, credit in making sure that in having picked a winner. But I think looking back, having seen the journey with them, and frankly, by the way, it wasn't that easy. I mean, you know this way better than I do. Like at the very beginning, they have amazing pedigrees. These are folks that have, incredible backgrounds, both in terms of academics and having worked at cool startups, but they weren't central casting from a Silicon Valley perspective. I think the company was relatively concentrated from a customer perspective at the beginning of the journey with logos that typical VCs didn't really recognize. And then I think that there were questions around the business model too. I think it wasn't an obvious bet at the beginning, but what ended up working out really well is I think they just had a really cool vision and a big vision. They understood their market really well. They wanted to build in the AI infrastructure category at a time when GPT has dropped, there was a GPU squeeze, and they were knowledgeable enough about their market to say, okay, there's not an opportunity in text, we're going to focus on image, even though nobody believes that's a market yet. They hired incredible talent.
Mostly
think
Turkish talent.
maybe more than half of the people that work there are Turkish. They went from 0 to 50 million revenue in 25 people. I'd say maybe 10, 15 of them being Turks, cracked engineers that they found off of the internet. Batuhan, their head of engineer, I don't know how they found him. That guy was just doing open source commits and, just being a prolific, human. And I think what Görkem and Burkay have done a tremendous job is just finding incredible talent like that. And then they just keep delivering. Those guys work like nothing I've ever seen before. They're, incredibly fast, incredible rapid iteration, both in terms of the business model, in terms of the product, in terms of hiring. I mean, Görkem is he will respond to you within 5 minutes, no matter where he is. I sometimes text him, he's in China, he's in Japan, and the man's responding to messages. If he's responding to me, and I'm not a priority by any means, I can't imagine what he's doing with his customers. So I just think they're awesome people, and I'm so excited to watch the rest of the journey as it unfolds. But
you went to high school with him, right?
Yeah, we did elementary school, high school, Model United Nations,
they're
tennis.
besties. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
It's an interesting story for me because I'm looking back trying to reflect what made him who he is today, and it happened super fast. So I
What do you think? I'll
almost every
pose the
day.
question back to you. What do you think?
I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't expecting to answer questions actually. But when we invested in Fal AI, it was a super non-obvious story because the Görkem was actually in Çeşme. It was COVID, so everyone was abroad. And the co-founder Burkay was in Mexico. So in my head, it's
I was supposed to be in Mexico with them, actually.
guy in Mexico, a guy in Çeşme building a unicorn. Sure, good luck. And 3 years later, I'm massively wrong. They're a $4.5 billion company.
Yeah,
so.
it's wild.
Yeah, so I don't know what I'm talking about, basically, as an investor.
But also, it's not just like a random $4.5 billion company. They went from 1 million run rate in 23 to 30 in 24, and now they're going to finish the year at maybe $250 million of revenue. It's insane.
Insane.
This is one of the top, basically, 10 AI companies in the world right now. So proud.
And every time you think you know what product market fit means, you learn the lesson again. You're like, oh, that's what product market fit means. And Görkem, Fal AI was an example of that for me, where I thought that product market fit meant something else. Now I feel like it means a 10x year-over-year growth at that scale.
Yeah.
Is what it is. Ece, jumping on to you. Khosla also does a lot of emerging technology investments. I mean, crazy founders with bold ideas, whether that's in biotech, robotics, all these fields that other VCs won't look at. Khosla would be the first to jump, and then others would follow. How do you go around that? Do you try to look for overlooked markets that are about to emerge?
So a lot of the members on the team spend a lot of time in deep tech, robotics, and whatnot. I tend to spend more time in traditional software, financial technology, and consumer.
More boring,
but more boring. But here's the thing: this thesis is the same whether you are doing robotics or fintech. It really is basically go big or go home. Like that really what it just comes down to. Because ultimately, like, I'm not interested in anything that's sort of incremental to the status quo. The only opportunities I'm interested in are ones that have the potential to be massive and transformational. So when I meet a founder, one of the first questions I ask is, where are you going to be in 5 to 10 years if everything goes your way? Like, tell me that vision of everything is going great. What does that look like? And the wrong answer is, I'm going to be doing what I'm doing today, but like bigger. I'm going to be getting X revenue. That's not interesting. What's interesting is, okay, I've conquered a niche that I'm in. I've expanded into adjacencies. I am now transforming this business. So it's not exciting to hear that you want to sell a software to a company and improve their workflow by 10% efficiency. What's exciting is if you can improve it 10x, and it really just comes down to that mindset thing. And then when we're evaluating like rounds in between, like what do we look at a seed, Series A, Series B, Series C, we're looking at what risk you can retire with that amount of money. At the seed stage, it might be you're going to retire some technical risk. At the Series A, it might be like you're going to retire a decent amount of commercial risk. But like what can you do most efficiently as possible? So that really is just largely what it comes down to. You asked about, breakthrough tech. So Vinod Khosla always talks about how any kind of breakthrough deep tech innovation, be it sustainability or healthcare or whatnot, needs to work in like China and India prices, right? Because his worldview is if you're only building technology that's very expensive, that only works with a government subsidy in a rich market, you're only helping like 500 million or so of people in the world, where the founders need to be ambitious about how can we help like 10 billion people. So then whatever you create needs to work without a government subsidy at like China, India prices in a sustainable way. So it just all goes back to go big or go home.
And you also invested in a Turkish founder that's doing humanoid robots. I remember meeting him, and he was like, we're raising a $100 million pre-seed round, led by Khosla. First of all, can you tell us a bit about that experience, because he's a Turkish founder? I think it's super relevant.
It's before my time, unfortunately. It's before my time. I met him at like firm events, and
How are they doing? Are they doing the robot, actually? Is the robot
I'm
working?
not familiar with the investment, unfortunately. Way before my time.
Okay. And Edith, I think extraordinary talent want to be with other extraordinary talent, and that creates a talent network effect, which is why I think around AI, San Francisco is, that flywheel is spinning. Same for mobile gaming in Turkey, for example. Do you have other examples of other places other than Silicon Valley where you see that talent network effect, where skilled people in a certain category want to be at this other ecosystem because other skilled people are also there?
I think the easiest one to point out is I'm originally from Hong Kong, born and raised, and I think that despite what's going on in U.S. and China really have the network effect of building hardware, and also fintech. But on the hardware part is unbelievable. I recently went to Shanghai about 6 months ago at the JP Morgan conference, and just looking at Unitree with their robot dog walking around completely autonomous and just jumping on stage nonstop is really scary. And in many ways, I think that what's fascinating to me is if you think about it, EV really is a bigger robot, and they really nailed it. And every single time when I call, instead of Uber, it's DD, is some sort of BYD, or BYD actually have their own version of Lamborghini. Just gorgeous. It's very, very, very hard, I think, for the, you have to take my word for it, and just like it's insane to look at their factory. It's completely dark, and be able to basically, particularly Xiaomi recently launched their EV, wow. And that is something that's very, very hard to replicate.
But you've backed 4 Turkish companies, right, so far? 4 companies led by Turkish founders.
I wish I invested in $1 billion to 1. Otherwise, that will be another one.
Eylul,
and congratulations.
I wish she had invested.
I know, unfortunately.
Yeah, I remember talking to you about it.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's a biotech company that just IPO'd last week, led by a Turkish founder named Oğuzhan.
He's
good
also
fan of Eylul.
prolific, exceptional. At the time, the fund I was working at wouldn't let us invest in India-leaning organizations, and I was too poor to write angel checks, but I'm regretting. He's like insane. Awesome.
Amazing.
I'm so proud of him. Yeah.
Edith, 4 Turkish
And
founders.
you've done a great job in investing
Yes,
in him. Good
good
job.
for us. Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for the introduction, dude.
Shit. Edith, 4 Turkish founders, 4 companies led by Turkish founders in your portfolio. Just pick a favorite and tell us what they do, why you're excited about them.
Of course, Herbal with human finance. Also acquired another company of yours, which is ARF, and they really, Herbal's, you and I both met him now over, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago when he was still at head of growth for Facebook, and then later on also growth at Lyft, and then was the former chief product officer at Earn-In. He had just have amazing, amazing background, and originally from Turkey, just been in the Bay Area for a long time, and I feel like we're so fortunate to be able to invest in him and the team, and now like with the traction that they have, and plus regulatory stablecoin will be the future. And if you look at every single bank in the U.S. and launching some sort of stablecoin initiative, is the perfect person, not only for the right place, right time. This is the perfect moment of what they're doing, and I think everybody's checked them out.
They have 4 co-founders, Ali, Kazım, Erbil, and Richard. 3 of them are Turkish, and their token is traded on Binance. Would you advise people to buy it?
Of course.
Nice.
Wait,
is it
hold
legal?
on. Are you a SEC registered financial advisor? If no, then
Not speaking for Raise Capital, for myself.
Nice.
Yes.
Ece, we invest in founders that are going for that robo probability of success, but if they hit it big, right? I mean, we're going for a founder that's going for a 5% probability, but if it works out, it's going to give you a 100x, not just a 20x. Is that the only way to build a unicorn, or have you seen founders that go for a more high probability route, where they take these highly accurate steps, more linear growth, yet create an outsized outlier success?
The answer is yes, and it depends with some caveats. So largely speaking, right, you have like the hyper growth route, which is what Eylul was fortunately describing with like fall, right? Like the 1 to 30 to 50 or 60 to 100. There's that path. And then there's also the other path where if we're describing like more linear sustainable growth as like we did 1 million this year, we're going to do 3 next year, we're going to do 10 next year, we're going to do 30 after that. That does give me like a reasonable path towards building like a $100 million revenue company within 5-10 years our investable horizon. That's another path for as long as you're burning a reasonable amount of money along the process. I think, so I'm in the power law business, right? Like I assume majority of the things I invest in are going to just fail, but the ones that succeed are going to do really well. Other venture investors might be optimizing for a different strategy, and that can also be lucrative, but like I'm personally in like the power law business. So I think there's an interesting question. If you're succeeding, you keep going, right? And if you're failing, you fail. If you're in the middle, right, and you're sort of, say you did 300K this year, you're going to do 600 the year after, $1 million, $1.5 million later, right? You're not failing, but you're also not hitting venture scale. And like that, it's really hard to justify with that pattern, like venture scale outcomes. So then I'd be asking myself, if you're in that kind of 50 to 100% linear growth route, I would be asking myself, do I have a good reason why I'm poised for inflection? Like maybe I've been doing infrastructure for a few years and I am just at the precipice of like a technical unlock or a commercial unlock, in which case I should just keep going. If the answer to that is no, then I'd be thinking about like the opportunity cost of time and talent for the founder, right? Because if you're sitting in this room, you're kind of special as a founder. Like you got out of bed someday and you thought, I'm going to build a startup. Like it's probably going to fail, statistically speaking, but I'm going to do it anyways. And it's kind of a crazy thing to do, and that makes you special. So then you want to be spending your time with like what's going to cause maximum amount of impact. So is what I'm doing today and in the path that I'm on getting there is the question I would ask myself.
And Edith, one of the things we struggle at as a fund is it takes years for a founder to make his or her business a $100 million business. Say they've sacrificed 5-7 years of their lives, and now we expect them to sacrifice another 5-7-10 years of their lives to reach a unicorn, $1 billion status, and that takes a lot of compromises. And it's really tough to assess that early on when they're still young, just starting off, excited. How do you assess that relentless drive that's going to be there 5-7 years from now? Can you assess that?
It's not easy. It's not easy. And I think being the reality is, doing early stage, we often talk about our successes, but there's 80-90% of many founders are really tired, and it's really not easy to work on a business like Fatih for many years, and many of them like give up 5-10 years in, and the reality of being early stage, we just need to know that 80-90% of them may fail. But we're, as you mentioned, we're in the power law business. It's really the 1%, 2%, and hopefully in most of our portfolio for each fund, about 40 or so companies. Usually is the 2 or 3 companies, and in my case it was 1 company, really did 7x of 1 fund. And
which company is that?
That was Solana. And it's
I know,
very hard to do that. So in our case, it's just that we're here, and I don't want to fault a founder that, my God, like I've been doing this for 10 and 15 years, still not going there. And we're in a business where it's all about high growth. And to scale to 100 million is not easy. It just takes a long time. And so sometimes, but at the same time, I think my biggest epiphany these days, particularly related to AI, we recently have a couple of amazing, awesome exit. Sometimes it's not about the revenue either. And so there are certain segments where there's cycle for everything, particularly in Silicon Valley. If you pay attention to what's going on particularly with Meta recently, after the acquisition of Scale AI, they've done probably at least 10, 20 different acquisitions, and is a talent grab. And I think what's really interesting, especially in the M&A market, it is really U.S. dominant, not even China, even though they have the firepower to do this. So we have to kind of think strategically, as you're investing in the people, sometimes from an exit point of view, it's actually not only about revenue growth, but it's really so much about talent. If you think about it, I probably won't invest in a research company when OpenAI first launched as a nonprofit. There's no way. I don't have that foresight at all. But yet, you guys did, so congratulations.
Can't take credit before my time, but yes.
But it is really interesting, and I didn't have that lens with that vertical, but we're learning too. So it's so interesting with each of the vertical and the cycle.
And sometimes I think like doing exit analysis at the seed and Series A stage is dangerous on its own, because in some ways, like if I'm thinking about how many X I'm going to get and how I'm going to sell this to a strategic or a private equity firm, we're not really set up for success. It's a little bit like the assumption is it's going to be a standalone public company. It may not be, but that's got to be kind of the assumption, I think, at the seed and Series A
And it's
stage.
really depressive. I don't want to part ways with the founder. It's depressive to talk about separation. I don't like exits. Eylul, before we close, you just invested in 2 Turkish founders, and hopefully we're doing it together, I'm not sure.
Oh my God.
Tell us about them and what pushed you over the line.
Oh my God, we're going to talk about this after.
All right. You're not going to talk about it now.
Oh,
Nice.
I can't talk about it. Oh, you want to? Oh yeah, sure.
And then we close.
Yeah, of course. Well, both of them are prolific people again. One of them is not only just like really smart, but also I think he's very mission driven. Emre was actually, I don't even know how many people he's taught how to code, how many people he's taught to speak English in Turkey. He's, I think, been a member of the startup community for a while. And then Ege is someone who comes from a both design as well as machine learning background, MIT trained. He's created digital art that was sold at Christie's. He was also a previous YC founder. They're coming together to do something kind of wonky and interesting. So it could be a complete donut, or it could be a really interesting outcome. We'll see. But I'm in it for the joy of building it with them. What they're working on is creating an infrastructure layer to introduce personalities into companion apps. So I'm a big proponent, given obviously where I sit at I help manage an AI-based fund that's backed by Google. So I do believe that the way we think about engaging with software is changing and evolving. You know, back in the day, like in the 1980s, in order to access computationally heavy resources, you had to do low-level language. You had to know a lot of coding, and then Windows 95 comes in, you have graphical user interfaces, and then I'd say maybe the iPhone is another way of humans having a different UI UX to engage with software, and then what ChatGPT ended up doing is create natural language as a layer to make even less technical people engage with very computationally heavy queries. So what the next generation of that is voice, and I believe that a lot of the interactions we're going to have with software going forward is going to be through voice, and then over time we're going to build relationships with these apps. Let it be in the form of an app for IBM that represents their personality, the way that the brand would like to position themselves, but it could also be a therapy app where you need to go and evolve the persona that's embedded in the therapy app to fit the best needs of the end user. So this creates a very complicated context engineering, but also data management problem, because imagine you're talking to a voice agent for like 6 months, and there's going to be insane amounts of unstructured and structured data that you have to absorb and be able to retain. So it's a memory, it's a relationship, it's a voice agent, it's a lot of those layers combined. So what this company is doing, it's called Emotion Machine, is introduce a third-party layer to enable any app that's building to build relationships and voice or text personalities as a way of engaging with software. So it's a big idea. We'll see if it works. If it doesn't, it's fine. I'm excited to work on it.
Well, thanks a lot for joining me on this panel, and thanks everyone for listening. We now have a WhatsApp group, the 4 of us. It's called E4VC.
Yes.
I like that E sequence here, but thank you.